Alright guys, so this is my analysis of this Steve Carpenter case. So the first thing it asks us to talk about is the customer value proposition. I think it was pretty obvious what Carpenter was trying to accomplish. He's trying to tap into the social marketing that has been booming during that time and use it to help people with investing. Really, it's meant to connect lower level investors with more successful ones. So that's the value it's bringing to initial investors, that they can have access to the advice and the encouragement of more successful investors, which I think is a really smart um, proposition to bring to your customers, because there are a lot of initial investors out there that don't even know where to start. Um, and in the go-to-market plan, I thought it was interesting because I felt like they kind of rushed into it because they wanted to win the TechCrunch 40, I think is what it was called, that award, so that they could have a little more awareness. But I felt like the first version that they put out had a few issues, especially with it seemed like the back end. Um, People weren't really registering after they went on. Like, they got on the site, but they didn't really register. So there's obviously some kind of marketing issue, which I feel it may have just been that they rushed into it a little too much. But they did seem to address that with the new versions of Cake that they brought out. I especially liked when they reassessed their users. So instead of focusing on a bunch of different kind of investors, they focus on one profile of investors, which I think really helped them. Um, so then the technology and operation strategy, I think I kind of discussed that a little bit just now, but I feel that overall they did a good job of accommodating to the needs. But I feel like they missed one major flaw, which was mentioned later in the case, that those successful investors don't really have a desire to share their secrets and how they're successful. So I felt like that's a major flaw in their operating um, strategy, because that's kind of their whole process is based on the fact that people can seek advice from higher level investors. But if those investors aren't willing to really share their secrets, then their whole strategy is gone. And then for the cash flow formula, I really liked how they had three different streams for revenue, um, going from you know advertising to actually selling the subscriptions to Cake. Um, I felt like they had thought that through, that there were many streams of revenue to come through, and then also with, like, I think there was data licensing from the other financial institutions, um, because they wanted to have a real combination of all financial data so that they could really have a good basis for their tracking. So I felt like they had a good source for revenue, but as far as cash flow, I felt like they were just asking for too much investment. They needed too much capital to really be successful. I think that was their real downfall. Um, they needed a lot of money to accomplish the things they needed to do, and they weren't bringing in as much money as they thought. So they didn't necessarily have the cash flow. I mean, they had a few different sources of revenue, but it wasn't panning out the way they thought it would. Um, so as far as the business model itself, I kind of feel that Cake was doomed from the outset. And it's not because I felt like there's a lot of value in what he was offering, but I think that it really only adds value to initial investors. There wasn't a whole lot of motivation or incentive for the more experienced people to use Cake. They already know what they're doing, and they don't really care to share their secrets. They want to save them for themselves, and they might share them with close friends or family. But I don't think that they'd be willing to just share it with strangers on a new social media platform. So I felt like it was really good for initial investors, but it was very reliant on those initial investors receiving help and instruction from successful investors, which I just don't think they had. So I felt like it was kind of doomed from the start. But I felt that Steve, the overall question of this um, was this a good experience for Steve? And I don't think it was a pleasant experience, but I think it was a good experience for him. I feel that he learned a lot, especially with how to go about investing. I felt like he learned that, he went too quick with gaining capital. He should have started something that worked, or a program that seemed to work, and then base off that continue to grow it. I felt like he wanted to get to that award that I forgot what it's called again, but he wanted to get that. I think it's TechCrunch 40. He wanted to get that award, so he's had a lot of motivation to get it out there quick, which I feel like um, was kind of a not it was a terrible thing really, because they weren't prepared. People didn't know about them enough, um, and they didn't get the traction they wanted. So people went with Mint, the other company that actually did win the award. So I part of Cake's failure, I feel, was beyond Steven's control, because I do feel that the business model was flawed from the beginning. But I do feel like it could have been more successful had he paced himself and scaled in a more appropriate manner when he was ready to scale, after he had more of a proof of concept. I feel like he just kind of went full scale before he really had any kind of proof of concept. Um, I feel like the main reason for Cake's failure was, in my opinion, the business model wasn't there. Um, if it was there, then I feel like it could have taken off and they could have overcome the other strategical errors they made. But I feel like overall the biggest reason was just the business model itself. So that's my quick analysis. I hope that you guys gained something out of what I said, and good luck.